Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and this channel's all about running great adventures. Sometimes one-shots, but also sometimes small, short campaigns. In any case, today I'm going to be reviewing one of the first adventures written for Dungeon Crawl Classics, Frozen in Time. Designed for first-level characters, Frozen in Time sends a bold group of heroes deep into an old glacier where they find a shocking discovery from across time and space. And if you're looking at the cover of this one, well, you'll probably guess what that surprise is. Dungeon Crawl Classics is an old-school inspired system that takes pride in gonzo settings, over-the-top environments and villains, and danger that would scare the bravest warriors right away, or at least the ones that come from 5th edition. But I'll say this right up front, Frozen in Time has all of those elements. But does it deserve a place at your table? Does its mashup of barbaric fantasy and far future weirdness work, or should it be left in the past? Well, get ready for some serious spoilers, because not only am I going to give you a full review of Frozen in Time, but I'm going to give you GMs some tips and tricks on how to run this one like a pro. Frozen in Time is written by Michael Curtis. It's not an especially long adventure. It clocks in at about a dozen pages and can almost always be finished in just one session. It's designed for a party of first-level characters, but it also works as a funnel where each player takes in 4 0-level characters and hopes for the best. Now, before I get into this adventure, I'll say right away that it is heavily inspired by the classic 1980 Advanced Dungeons & Dragons adventure, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Now, many old-school D&D players have such fond memories of this original adventure because it was one of the first adventures to feature a genre mashup. Players thought that they were heading into just another regular old dungeon, and instead found themselves in a downed spaceship, complete with ray guns and power armor. I never actually played Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. I'm familiar with it, but I just never got around to it even back in the day. But I've run across so many players that have such fond memories of this adventure because of that twist. Frozen in Time is very much an homage to that adventure. The players are primitive northern tribesmen, and one day they discover a large glacier, the Ghost Ice, has shorn away a large section, revealing icy caves. And exploring these caves leads the players to an abandoned structure from the far future. This place in the glacier, you see, was the hideout of a time-traveling smuggler and thief, Zeepy Snow 11. It's kind of a strange name, but I like it. And for years, Zeepy Snow 11 was this brilliant rogue who time traveled around the time stream, stealing artifacts, artwork, and collecting weird animal specimens, only to sell them to the highest bidder. And he needed a hideout for all of this, so he carved out this place in the glacier, and that's where he kept his vault of weirdness. Now, after time, old age came to Zeepys like it does to everybody, and he died an old man, and he left his hidden vault undiscovered. Until now, where the glacier has been shorn away and a bold band of first-level players decide to march into it. I'll say right away that if you're hoping that this adventure surprises the players with its far future location, you'll probably be disappointed. Even if your players don't see the cover, which just reveals that spoiler right away, they'll find themselves figuring this out just very early on in the adventure. As soon as you start describing the tunnels and the ceramic walls and the geodesic domes, the players will know right away that they have a fantasy future mashup happening. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do wish the adventure kept this twist a little bit more hidden, since a lot of players these days don't know about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, so they might actually again be surprised when they start their Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure by exploring what's essentially a spaceship. So the introduction of the adventure goes really fast, with the players scaling up an icy cliff to get into this newly discovered part of the glacier. There, they'll fight off a saber-toothed bear, the first combat of the adventure, and that's fun. But then the players will soon begin to explore ZP No 11's vault. The vault is made up of about a dozen rooms. The layout of this dungeon is very vertical, with many areas connected by lift tubes. GMs, you really should read the adventure carefully before you play, because it's very easy to slip up with the layout of this dungeon and have the players like accidentally go down when they were supposed to go up, since some of these tubes are one way, or access a room that requires a special key that maybe the players don't have. There's not information like missing from this adventure, then the maps are pretty useful, but just the way it's laid out is pretty complex, and it can make it difficult for the GM to just intuitively figure that out. So just read the adventure ahead of time and mark up your map just showing those one-way areas, and just make little notes for yourself. It's going to make this go a lot smoother. The vault's 12 or so rooms have a really good mix of challenges. There's some really fun combats interspersed throughout the vault, against a variety of foes, like there's yetis who have broken into the place, or medical drones that have gone haywire, and there's even a robot that started life as a costume from like a TV show before ZP No 11 swiped it. And while this robot is clearly written as an homage to Lost in Space, I like that the adventure suggests that the GM take this robot and reskin it to something relevant for your players from your favorite TV show. Like last time I ran this adventure, I actually made the robot Starscream from the Transformers, complete with a whiny voice and his null rays.
Now what's that supposed to be? An iron golem?
Who are you? How dare you enter my vault?
I didn't realize iron golems were so whiny.
What did you say? I've never killed first-level characters before.
Believe it or not, I did have a player who died like that, gunned down by Starscream in the middle of my Dungeon Crawl Classics game. Well done, Frozen in Time. As you'd expect, as the players wander around and explore the vault, they'll find some far future items that they can collect here. Some are immediately useful, like there's a blaster rifle that is very handy against some of the monsters in the vault, or they can find other cool things like an ancient hoplite shield from the Trojan War. Other items they can find are just fun and silly to collect, like they can find the real Mona Lisa here, or Wyatt Earp's sheriff's badge from Tombstone, Arizona. Now, none of the items in this adventure will ruin ongoing campaigns, because the game design balance of these is clearly designed that they're useful here and nowhere else. So for example, that blaster rifle, well, it only gets 5 shots, and the players have to make a luck roll every time they fire it, otherwise it explodes. So there's just no chance that it's going to ruin future adventures with all this modern and future tech. The vault also features some really fun rooms that are based on strange science fiction technology. For example, there's a room with a working time pad in it, which if the players step onto it and activate it, they can actually be shot forward or backward in time on a one-way trip to another time and place.
Friends, quickly, we have our treasure. Now let's activate this device and we'll leave here and be as rich as kings. Do you need a new king around here?
And later on in the adventure, the PCs can find a time tagger device, which lets them tag foes and then beam them into the time pad room, which is just a really fun, kooky way to deal with some of the tougher opponents in the adventure. The PCs can also find the dead body of ZP No 11 in the med lab, which will give them a hint as to like who he was and what was happening here in his strange hideout. My favorite rooms are the ones where ZP No 11 stored his menagerie in these stasis fields. Like the players can walk into these rooms and see a young Tyrannosaurus Rex just frozen there, or an Ant-Man from a post-apocalyptic age, or even an owlbear. These creatures are all still alive, but they're just held in suspended animation, unable to move or do anything, just waiting for the PCs to do something stupid like turn off the stasis fields, which your players inevitably will. But even if the players smartly leave these creatures alone, it will come back to haunt them later, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Frozen in Time is pretty open-ended. It plays out like a lot of other dungeon adventures. The players just go from room to room, exploring the place, collecting some of those artifacts, fighting off some of those nasty monsters when they find them. But then eventually the adventure will culminate in an ending when the vault's power plant just explodes. Now, this happens on the GM's whim. You can kind of trigger it whenever you want. But just to make sure that it doesn't come out of nowhere, I suggest that you hint at that there's problems with the power plant from the very beginning of the adventure. Like, you could describe how when the players start exploring, there's surges of power, the lights kind of go on and off, and it's timed with distant booms coming from the power generator. Just so when that final event happens and the power plant explodes, the players just don't think it's just random and that you as a GM are just like giving up on the session. The adventure does give GM some tips on when to time the explosion of the power plant, but usually if you just time it when most everything has been explored or right after a tough fight, it'll feel good to the players. With the vault's power out, the PCs have some serious problems. First, in exactly 10 minutes, the entire vault will explode into a nuclear fireball.
What did you do, you first level morons?
So now it's time for everybody to run for the exits. But making this harder is the fact that the vault, which has mostly been a peaceful place up until now, is now a labyrinth of danger. All of the gravity lifts are broken or filled with flames, so the PCs have to figure out how to manually navigate their way out. The time pad is on the fritz, and worse, all of those stasis fields that were keeping those dangerous creatures in suspended animation all fail at the same time. This usually means that the PCs have to race from the vault with a menagerie of angry creatures chasing after them, including a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a Walrus Man, and a three-headed tiger. This is the moment of the adventure where the craziness and insanity just like are cranked up to an 11, and I've had whole parties just wiped out completely in the final moments of the adventure. But with some luck, the PCs can escape the vault and live to share the story back with their tribe. And that's Frozen in Time. So what do I think? Now, those of you who watched my last video will remember that I judge dungeon adventures by 4 things: their fuel mix of challenging encounters, an environment that tells a good story, some flexibility for game masters to really make the dungeon their own, and a twist, a set piece that the players will always remember. Frozen in Time's mix of encounters is pretty good. It's actually not that challenging of an adventure until the very end. That's why I probably wouldn't run this as a funnel, because I think great funnel adventures kind of winnow the players down as they go through the adventure, but here I think most of them will survive until that final crazy ending. Generally, the PCs are facing one foe at a time in the combat encounters, and none are particularly dangerous. And there's no traps really in the adventure. There are some interesting environmental puzzles with the lifts and some rooms needing keys. But compared to some Dungeon Crawl Classics adventures, Frozen in Time is fairly tame on the danger level. The adventure is much more about exploration than it is about combat. But this exploration is really where the adventure shines. The atmospheric storytelling is excellent here. The vault feels like the vault of a time-traveling smuggler. You can almost feel his personality with each of the things he stole or the way he set up his rooms. Every room has a clear purpose, a story behind it, and it all connects together. And all the sci-fi weirdness is understandable to players. Like, none of it is confusing or illogical or feels like you have to read another book to understand it. The whole adventure feels ripped from the pages of an old sci-fi pulp magazine. I also like how Frozen in Time has some good flexibility built into it. I like that the GM can trigger the end game when they feel the time is right. I also like how the adventure includes some elements that the Game Master can use to customize the adventure, like reskinning some of the challenges to different science fiction themes. Or another part where the PCs can find and release this unidentified man from a stasis field, and this man, again, is not sketched out very well, so he can act as a guide to kind of fill in the story. Maybe he knows all about what happened to the time traveler here, or he can be a backup character in case one of the players players has died, or the last time I ran this, I made this character an ongoing villain who once lived in the future. He blamed the PCs for kidnapping him from the original timeline just because he was confused, and he swore revenge on them, and he used his modern knowledge to act as a real threat to the players in their future adventures. I like that the adventure includes these elements. And finally, I look for great dungeon adventures to have a twist, a turn, something that will remain memorable to the players for years to come. And I think the finale of Frozen in Time has this going for it. When your players realize that the entire vault has lost power and is about to go nuclear, and they have a T-Rex chasing after them, and a whole cavalcade of other crazy monsters, this finale is going to be fun, frantic, and memorable, and I promise you it'll stick in your players' minds for many, many years. So in the end, Frozen in Time is a pretty great Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure for groups that like exploration, weirdness, and a unique setting. I think its adventures like this, even though this was written 10 years ago, really set the bar for Dungeon Crawl Classics. In fact, I think the only groups that won't enjoy Frozen in Time are the ones that just don't like genre mashups or prefer more bloody combats throughout an adventure. But other than those groups, Frozen in Time is just a great adventure that absolutely deserves a place at your table and just does such a great job conveying what Dungeon Crawl Classics does best: weirdness, frantic fun, and moments of crazy utter danger. Oh, and also, if you want tokens for this adventure for your virtual tabletop, just go ahead and check the link in the description below and you can use mine. And if you've played or run Frozen in Time, tell me what your experience was like. I bet you've had some pretty good stories about that ending. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what happened.
But whatever happened, it won't be as cool as what I, Starscream, did to that cleric. Ah!
Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if you see a T-Rex frozen in time, just pepper the thing with arrows until he looks dead enough, and then carry on exploring.